All right, so this is big news, exciting news that Sha'carri Richardson was able to really get back on track here and run a great 10.57. There was a good amount of tailwind, about 4.1. I saw some things online that said that that essentially can translate to around a 10.73-ish, somewhere in there. But the big thing is, though, she really didn't, if we look at the end of the race, she didn't really finish through all the way. She was out in front pretty good and got to a really high top speed and kind of broke down from there. So, you know, she probably could have ended up getting a little bit better time. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, when you're at full speed like that, you're going to be continuing to run at a high rate. It's not like she's just going to be, you know, going from 22 miles an hour to down at 19 miles an hour, for instance. She's going to be, you know, kind of slowing down over a period of time. So there could be she could have probably ran faster, right? She probably could have gotten more to the low 10.5s there, which would have translated into a better time. But at the end of the day, that was still a very, very impressive run. We're going to break down what are the main things, or what are some of the main things that we really saw that she did very, very well. And the first thing is, as many of us know, you know, goes into her start. It really seems like with Sha'carri here that when she gets an effective start, that it really translates well into her ability to get to top speed. And I know, I mean, that's really how it is for everybody, right? But how did she do this, and what were some of the effective things that really translated to help her out? And we look into the first step, and she did a really good job of getting a great reaction and getting that front foot down, right? So we could see in comparison to some of the other girls here, and her main competition here was Twanisha Terry, you know, another great 100-meter runner here. Again, looking at Sha'carri, what she's able to do really well, get that front foot down and be able to very, very effectively transition right through. This is where, you know, those first 2-3 steps are super important when it comes to being able to create that rhythm, create that timing that is necessary to be able to really get to a high top speed. So when we've seen her really run at a high level, we've seen her be able to get out very effectively, and we can see that she ends up doing a really good job of not only getting her weight to go forward and getting her toes to be able to come up and through, but also being able to really drive those knees through. So even though she's getting a good amount of lateral movement in her hips, she's going side to side a good amount in her hips, we're still seeing a good amount of straight forward action within the knees. And that ends up being a big correlation, is that we want to be able to see on one side the knees coming straight through, but in order to do that, a lot of times you end up having to shift. So we can see, like here, look at how much her hips are facing over to the side here, so then the knee can come straight forward and through. That allows her to then come forward and then land out to the side. Now she's doing the same thing to the other side, where now her hips are facing all the way over to this side, which now allows that right knee to be able to come up and through and strike the ground, and also allows her to be able to transition and land a little bit more on like the middle to outside part of the foot, and then transition very quickly into the inside part of the foot and push straight forward. So this is a critical part of being able to really develop a good amount of acceleration. So let's compare her to Twanisha Terry here. We can see first step, third step, fifth step, seventh step, eighth step. It looks like she's a little bit, so Twanisha Terry actually hits her eighth step before Sha'carri Richardson does, but look at that eighth step where Sha'carri Richardson is in comparison to Twanisha Terry. She's a little bit back behind that line, which just shows that she's accelerating very well and picking up a lot of distance per step, right? Look at that air time that she has right here. So we can see foot coming off the ground, 0.17, and then striking back on the ground at 3.1. So she's spending 0.14 seconds off the ground here, which is an important thing to recognize, how early she's starting to get vertical. Let's see where Terry is. We'll say 0.11. And then down at 2.4, probably a little bit early. I'd say it's probably closer to 0.12. So it's probably about 200ths of a second difference, just because when we look to see when she's coming off the ground at that 0.11, she's still a little bit on the ground there. And then when we go and get to 2.1 here, she's really about to be touching the ground. By the time it gets to 2.4, she's all the way on the ground. This is why I like to really see the high frame rate version, just because I think it allows us to get a little bit more accuracy, a better understanding of what exactly is going on at each one of the steps. But again, you know, even though she is doing a good job of being able to get a good amount of distance per step, she's still staying in her drive phase really well. Like, she's still trying to accelerate, get her legs up and through, feet up and through. And I think that ends up being important. Is you got to be able to understand that even as we're starting to get into more of like a top speed position here, we still want to be accelerating with being able to get the legs up and through, toes up and through. Look at how much height that she's getting on each one of these steps. You can just tell she's covering so much ground. And if we look it up, so Twanisha Terry is 5'5", where Sha'carri Richardson is 5'1". So it's a 4-inch difference in terms of height, but you can just see that, again, she's just covering so much distance per step. And I think a lot of that has to do with not only how are we able to generate force in the ground, right? So we can see with her force production, we've already looked into this where like she's so quick off the ground. And if you haven't seen this before, she lands at 0.31. And I mean, she's about off by 3.8. By 4.1, she's definitely off the ground there. You know, typically we say that her foot contact time is probably about 0.09, 0.08. You know, we've even seen times where it looks like it could be under or closer to like 0.07, right? Like look at this one here. So this one should be down at 5.4, and then she's already off at 6.1, right? And look at how fast she gets up off the ground here. Like she gets to this position, right? 5.8 by 6.1, like she's getting so vertical off the ground. She's so bouncy with how that foot comes off the ground. And I think a lot of that has to do with, of course, how is she striking the ground, but also the amount of rotational force she's generating here, right? You can see as she's running, she's so strong in her upper body. I mean, you just look at her body here. I mean, she has very, very strong shoulders, very strong core, and so she's generating so much force side to side. And I know a lot of people talk about wanting to be really loose, right? Open with the fist, open with the hands. We see the opposite here where she's very kind of stiff with her hands, getting a ton of action and momentum through her upper body, which allows her to then generate a lot of force into the ground. So, you know, you got to be able to understand how to utilize your body to really maximize force production and be able to get those feet all the way up and through, legs all the way up and through. And then when your legs are hitting the ground, now we want to just be able to control that and be able to stabilize that. So a lot of that has to go into your training regimen. Like what are you doing to be able to strengthen your lower body, and how well can you create that rhythm and timing, right? Where you're going in as your foot striking the ground, right? So we can see right here, she's striking the ground with that right leg, right? So you can see how her hands are during that foot strike, okay? And then she is coming off the ground here, right? Getting a little bit of rotational force as she's coming off the ground. And just notice how fast she comes right straight through. So she's so in sync with like when that foot's coming off the ground is when the arm's coming straight through, and then vice versa. When the leg's coming through, the other arm's pulling straight back, and that's what's creating a lot of force within her legs, is how well is she able to rotate within her upper body. The more you can generate good amount of rotational force within the upper body, then the better we can actually generate force into the ground with the lower body. It's not only lower body focus when doing this. The lower body is almost like absorbing the force, while the upper body has to do a lot of the force creation, as well as being able to get itself in a position where then we can have good hip flexion, we can have good knee drive, we could get ourselves into the right position. So we don't have the ability within our upper body to be able to properly rotate, then it makes it a lot more difficult for us to get to the ranges that you want to be able to get to. So understanding how to use rotation and effective rotation within the spine makes a big difference when it comes to sprinting and really being able to get to high speeds. And also, depending on your body type, that makes a big difference when it comes to, you know, how to be able to use shoulder extension, arm extension when running, really to be able to maximize your overall sprinting mechanics. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you like the information, click that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations, you can leave those down below. Just really love looking into sprinting mechanics, and you know, been able to find more and more details, more and more small nuances within sprinting. As you can tell, I look into all the different parts of running that can have an impact on your ability to run fast. Like there's not only one thing that is going to make it so you can end up being a top sprinter, or if we only look at it based off of vertical force creation or horizontal force creation, or really try to put everybody into a box of how everybody should be able to run, right? And not everybody has the same sprinting mechanics. Not everybody's going to be able to fit into those same categories. We have to be able to understand, one, what are some of the main things that we see within sprinters that we want to be able to replicate, but then how can we replicate those with our certain talents, with our certain gifts, with the strategies that make the most sense to our body types, and what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses, and how can we really maximize our strengths, and how can we improve off of our weaknesses or make it so our weaknesses don't end up being the big thing that holds us back. And also being able to just understand effective strategies, right? I'm very big on let's build your top speed. Let's make it so you are a faster athlete, and use that to be able to improve within your 60, within your 100, within your 40-yard dash, within your 60-yard dash. We don't have to be doing endurance work all the time. And I think there's a lot of people that are getting too caught up with speed endurance and trying to maximize even, the last 100 of a 400 instead of really trying to build your top speed and understand what does top speed do for you and utilize your top speed to help you in being able to run more effectively within some of those races. So again, if you like the information, click that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We have a lot of things in the description down below in order to help you get a better understanding of what it is that we do. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.